And the point that everybody is missing is that COVID-19 is the pin, right? The problem is the bubble that the pin pricked, because everybody thinks we had a great economy before COVID-19. We didn't. We have a bubble. We had a bubble. And so they think all we have to do is like turn the economy back on and everything will go back to being great. Well, we can't go back to the way we were because we can't reflate that bubble. So there is no turning the economy back on because we can't reflate a bubble. So people are wrong if they think that, well, this is going to be a quick, self-inflicted wound and we're going to heal. It's not. I mean, yes, COVID is making it worse, but the problem is the economy that existed before COVID, and not only is the disease going to make it worse, but the government's cure is far worse than the disease itself, and not just to shutting down the economy. It's the financing the shutdown with budget deficits and printing money. I mean, it'd be one thing if we were using our savings, right, to get us through this storm, but we don't have any savings. Thanks to the Fed, we're all broke, right? Everybody is living paycheck to paycheck. Everybody is levered up. And so while everybody is sheltering at home and not working, not producing goods, not providing services, the Fed is printing all this money. And in fact, there's a lot of people today that are sitting at home getting bigger checks from the government than they got from their employers. Except when they were working, they were contributing into the economy. Now they contribute nothing, but they're trying to take out by spending the government money. So we are creating an inflationary nightmare, right? All this government, right? This huge increase in government. People are not asking, how are we going to pay for this? Right? The government is spending trillions and trillions more than it was. The government is now actually spending more money from debt than taxation. I just looked at the numbers today. 51.5 cents out of every federal dollar spent has been borrowed. So the national debt is 25.5 trillion and skyrocketing. The Fed's balance sheet is 7 trillion. So we're getting this massive increase in government spending, and no one's getting a tax hike. In fact, people are getting tax cuts. So how are we going to pay for all this government? We're not getting it for free. So it's inflation. It's going to be a destruction in the purchasing power of the dollar. So all the problems I was worried about a decade ago are now much bigger than they were then. And so the inflationary consequence, the real crash, is going to be far bigger now than it would have been had it come sooner. I mean, and it doesn't even matter now about the pin. The pin is irrelevant at this point because the bubble's already been pricked, right? And so what was the pin in 2008? It was real estate prices falling, right? Because once real estate prices fell, then real estate loans went into default. And then the lenders lost money, so it turned into a financial crisis. And also, people now had less wealth because the recovery was kind of powered by the wealth effect. People living in appreciated homes not only felt richer, but they can actually borrow the equity out of their homes and spend it. So you had a lot of spending that was a function of the real estate wealth, which all went away when the real estate wealth went away. But this is a much bigger financial crisis because it's just not just the mortgage borrowers who aren't paying their loans. It's everybody. Think about all the businesses that are defaulting now, right? Not just homeowners that are defaulting. I mean, this is not just a residential real estate crisis. This is going to be a commercial real estate crisis. I mean, commercial real estate kind of got a pass in 08 because when the Fed slashed rates, that kind of propped up the commercial market. But this time around, rates were practically at zero before the crisis. So it's not like going from 2 to 0 is that big a deal in real estate compared to the loss of rental income, right? You got the office buildings, people are not paying their rents, or companies are going bankrupt, and other companies are deciding, you know, my people are working from home anyway. What do I need all this space? You got like WeWork and companies like that have all this space for sublet or gone bankrupt. And then you have the nightmare in retail, which, you know, these companies were on life support before COVID. They were hanging on by a string, and now the string is gone. So the stores, the department stores, in the malls, in the shopping centers, These guys aren't paying their rent. But it's not just, the stores. Gyms aren't paying their rent, right? Look at now, the rental car companies are going under. Avis just filed. That auto bubble is now popped. Look at all the Americans that have borrowed money to buy cars. What's going to happen to the used car market when you have all these cars that the rental companies, they're not even buying new cars. They were big buyers of cars. Now they're going to be big sellers of cars. So the bubble, air's coming out of the auto bubble. So this is the financial crisis on steroids as far as the amount of debt that can't be paid. And so the loans that are going into default, the losses that are going to be spread over the economy. And so in order to try to, prop everything up, the Fed is having to act on a much bigger scale. So everything it did wrong in 2008, it's doing wrong now, only on a bigger scale. It's having to print way more money. It's having to bail out way more companies, right? The deficits that we had back then are far bigger now. And people think, well, we got away with it back then, right? We printed all this money and we didn't have to suffer any adverse consequences. The dollar didn't crash. Bonds didn't crash. We didn't have the inflation, right? We had a slow recovery, but it was the longest one ever. We had a recovery, and look, real estate went back up, stocks went back up. So people think that because we got away with it before, we're going to get away with it again. We're not.